another episode of Just Onside. I hope you're doing fantastically well, because we all are. It's been an amazing week weather-wise. It's been absolutely gorgeous for our UK viewers. And just in case anybody scoffs, we do have an international viewer, at least one. That's Dennis. So hello, Dennis. Keep watching the show. As we mentioned on, I think, Monday or Tuesday, that we were going to have a guest. And as you can see, it depends on where the boxes are. But at the moment, he's on my left. We have got Mr. Mohammed Mogra, affectionately known as Moggy to his friends. So, Mohammed, how are you, sir?
Good evening, well, early evening, gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be invited onto your podcast. I can see that you are donned out in Uwais in a lovely kit. And are you
Leave that for me. Leave that for me. I was going to come back.
I'm not liking the choice of your kit, Ayub. Let's just, I'll leave it at that. But yeah, it's a pleasure, and it's a pleasure to be just on side today with you guys.
What is Ayub's kit?
It's the place that you were in during the week.
All right, okay, it's Germany. Oh, fair enough.
I don't know if he's having a slight dig at me with, with one of my favourite players going there.
He's noticed. Well done, Moggy.
That is a dig at me.
It wasn't a dig. It was going to be a comment later on that was going to bring. But it is absolutely delightful to have you, Moggy.
It is.
And just for our viewers, now normally when we do a show, there's very little, I suppose, talk about the show. But my goodness me, the excitement, the buzz from it appears to be his fans. Everybody was so excited. I think we'll probably have 1,000 views because Moggy's appearing on the show. So I'll be counting.
Let's hope
but
so.
We're absolutely delighted to have Moggy on the show. He's obviously a hardcore spud, so we'll be interested to find out what his views are. Right then, Uwais, you've been in Germany this week. How are you feeling, my brother?
I'm good. Got back very, very late last night, but as you saw, I was early in for work already, soldier that I am, but yeah, doing well. A little bit tired, but I'm doing okay.
All that cobblers.
Yeah. But Moggy did allude to it as to why I'm wearing a Spurs kit, and I would love just to say that I wanted to do it to make him feel welcome on the show with his debut. But the truth is that there was a little bit of shenanigans at work. We had a bit of I wouldn't call it a trivia quiz, but there was a question asked, and I asked one of my colleagues, and I said 100% she will know the answer, and if she doesn't, I'll wear a Spurs kit on the next podcast. And unfortunately, she got it wrong, so I've got to keep up my end of the bargain and wear this Spurs kit for Moggy's amusement. So, nice fit. It's more the model.
I was going to say. Yeah, we were talking just before we started shooting. We were talking about how it sort of fits, and my goodness me, it looks quite sexy on you. A magnificent specimen of a man.
Yeah, steady on you. Let's keep it moving. Come on.
All right, so
I'm taken.
Yeah. Right, great, excellent. Right, so we've talked about. We had George on a few weeks ago, a Burnley fan, and obviously we've got Moggy, and it's perfect timing. Because we've been talking about this for a little while, and we did schedule it for the international break, but it just so happens that Spurs have been absolutely flying. So what better time to talk about Spurs than now? So Moggy, the floor is yours. You talk about. But what I want to know, Moggy, is I've actually known Moggy for about 20 years on and off, in a sense that I've been away. I mean, I've not known Moggy for the full 20 years I've been away, but I've known this chap for about 20 years, but I've never quite, I think, asked you, how did you begin to support Spurs? Because you're a Blackburn-born lad, albeit now living in God's country, which is Preston. So how did it all happen?
Just before you answer, Moggy, when you say you've been away, I think you should just clarify that. I mean, it sounds deliberately vague. You were at Her Majesty's service.
Yes, I was just going to say.
Yeah, not quite. I was living in the smoke for a little while, so that's. But me and Moggy have played football together for a team called Blackburn United. I was. Apparently, I was, in my mind, a midfield dynamo, but others think otherwise. Moggy's old man was the coach, so obviously it meant that Moggy had lots of game time, which created a lot of criticism from the rest of the team. But it is what it is.
Blood is thicker than water, as they say.
It certainly is. So, Go on,
But,
Moggy. It is. It's an interest of mine as to how you became a Spurs fan.
well, first of all, as you said, you've known me for 20 years. A lot of people think I'm only 20 years old, but
Does anyone think that?
My granddad had a liking for Spurs. He had a soft spot for Spurs in the 80s, and I was very close to my granddad as I was growing up. I was like 8, probably 7 or 8, when he passed away, but that kind of stuck with me. And then it's Gaza and Lineker, who I were my favorite players around about the age of when I was about 10. You're talking Italia 90 and then, the early 90s. So, and they were playing for Spurs at the time. So that is how my affiliation with Tottenham Hotspur has come about. And a couple of my cousins have started supporting them as well, Zaki and Reese, who are out in Dubai, and I have apologized to them on many occasions for them having to endure the pain of supporting Spurs. I've been through it a lot longer, but they are flying the flag for Spurs out in Dubai, which I'm very glad about, that it's carrying on through the family. But that's how it's kind of come about, to be honest.
Interesting. I never did know. So it's now it's a fact that I know as to how you began to support Spurs. Now, I I can sort of see the pain. I've got a pal of mine who supports Spurs as well, and he's an anguished man. He's a man who's quite tormented supporting Spurs.
I know. Well, I know him when we played together for Blackburn United.
Yeah. The big man,
well.
big man at the back, very tidy player as well.
I'll just point. Ayub was I wouldn't say a midfield dynamo, but he was a hard-hitting midfielder who, covered the yards and got his fair share of yellow cards and, the odd red card. But it was a pleasure playing with Ayub back then on pitches at Pleasanton. So yeah, it was.
It's a mutual appreciation. We're leaving out brother Uwais here.
No. I was just going to say, when Moggy talks about you covering yards, I'm thinking he's covering 8 right now. And he's just sat down.
Ayub's always been known to find the space, as he says. He always finds the space. Yeah. So, but that's how I came about to support Spurs. So yeah, that's the story behind that.
All right. Yeah. Right. So, I mean, we joke about obviously the anguish of Spurs fan, and it's been quite traumatic in terms of being a Spurs fan. Promise so much, but in the end, deliver so little. This season seems to be very different. I mean, we've covered, myself and Uwais have covered Spurs, I think a few times, and it seems to be this season, everything seems to be sort of ticking or clicking. We talked about, I mean, the reason why I was wearing this thing was to do with Harry Kane and his venture into Germany. But it seems to be flowing beautifully. Everything seems to be falling into place. So what's your take so far in the season? Albeit it's only 4 games, but there seems to be a buzz around Spurs at this moment in time.
There is a big buzz around Spurs, and it's not just with the fans, it's with the players as well. I think you can see in the body language and the behavior of the players in the squad that they seem like they're happy playing football and their style of football again. And I've had this conversation with you and Uwais previously. I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago when Pochettino was coming slightly towards the end of his tenure at Spurs, and I always said to you guys that I'd love to have Mourinho managing Spurs, and I remember always saying, but you're going to sacrifice a style of play, and I was like, well, I'm sick and tired of style of play because it's not won us anything. So I was always saying to Uwais that I want a manager who's going to come in and win us something. And obviously Jose at the time was, he was one of the most successful managers in world football. And I think it was a year and a half or 2 years after that conversation that he actually came and managed Tottenham Hotspur, and I was extremely happy. But as Uwais did in the conversations we had, we sacrificed on the style of play. So Mourinho got us to the cup final. Levy sacked him. Very strange decision. In a one-off game, Jose has a chance against anybody. But after that, we had Nuno, Conte, we sacrificed again, but Conte come in with a big reputation. As everybody knows, he's won everything, in the game, not the Champions League, but, he's won the league with Chelsea. He's won it in different countries. So again, hopes were, things were looking good. He got us into the top four, but then cracks started to appear, and the famous press conference, as everybody saw, where he went off on a bit of a rant, and then it just kind of went downhill from there last season. And then now appointing the big Ange, there was a lot of skepticism around that. With him being Australian for a start, being at Celtic, not being proven. I think Levy might have carried off a masterstroke here with the way things are going at the minute. So Maddison, Ayub, I know we talk about him and you keep telling me that he was born to play for Spurs, and he's just in the last day or so, he's said it himself that he can see himself, he saw himself playing in our kit, in our stadium and for Tottenham. And the fact that we haven't replaced Ericsson or a playmaker of that, caliber, Maddison has come in and slotted in like he's been there for years. And like you keep saying, Ayub, he was born to play for Spurs. So things are looking good. Front foot football, pressing, goals are flowing. We're looking decent at the back. I think last season we had an issue with our midfield just being heavily overrun, no matter who we played, whether it was Leeds or whether it was I'd say Man City.
No, I think you did all right with us.
Yeah, I think Man City is we're their bogey team, but every game I was fearful for our midfield and defense last year. But this year, playing a back four, I think he's playing to the strengths of the players that he's wanted to sign that fit his style of play, especially Van der Ven at the back, with his pace, paired with Romero. Messi quoted last night that Romero is the best centre off in the world at the moment. Now that's up for that's up for debate.
I don't think it is up for debate. Go on then.
When the goat speaks, everybody listens. But honestly, I think I could name all the team, even Udogi that nobody really knew about, left back that we'd signed last season and kept him. We left him at Udinese to play the season, and now people are getting to know about him. Porro, young lad. I think it's just a young team enjoying their football, and I think the manager saying to them that I want you to play a certain style. If you make mistakes, that's on me as the manager, but he'd rather we make them mistakes instead of the ball being booted into Rose Z. And hence why Eric Dyer is not even getting a look in, because he would definitely not fit the style of play that we're playing. So yeah, Son getting a hat-trick last week. I'm sure we'll talk about Kane later on, but everybody was worried about where our goals would come from. Now, Kane last season was our playmaker, goal scorer. He was literally everything, but he had to be because we were lacking in quality in midfield. But it just goes to show how good of a player Harry Kane is and was for Spurs, that he was putting up them numbers season after season. But can't complain with the start. Historically, we have had similar starts to this, so people are waiting for the fall off. People keep telling me that let's see when the going gets tough and what happens, but the mood is good, the football's good, everyone's enjoying themselves, signings have been good, and the deadline day signing of Brennan Johnson as well. I think it's a signing. It's a bit different because it seems like it's a signing the manager wanted to make for his style of play and his system, which makes a massive difference when you allow the manager to do that instead of identifying players, bringing them in and saying to the manager, well, fit this guy in, to play in your team. So, I think a lot of people are now giving our manager the respect as well, because like you said, coming from Celtic and nobody really knowing about him before, I don't think, people had high expectations of him. And just from the way he conducts himself in interviews, the way he's got Spurs playing in, 6 weeks, what's he had? pre-season and 4 games, everyone can see a completely different Tottenham. So I was talking to Zaki when I was on holiday, and I was just saying to him that not just Ange as our manager, but a manager can come in and within 6 weeks completely change a philosophy and the way of playing football. That's where I have high respects for, because to come in and completely change that, they were still the same players about, and to completely change the way you're playing football and changing the atmosphere and changing the environment. I respect that for any manager that can come in and do that in a short space of time. So
what's he done then, Moggy? Because you're absolutely right. It's incredible. Usually they always sort of say that the manager needs a little bit of time to implement his ideas and philosophies. It seems to have been instant. Plus, also, in addition, you've lost your gun player. Maybe a lot of people talk about that you build a team around Harry Kane. So what's he done? Why is it that these players are playing so freely?
Well, firstly, he's changed the formation. I think from going from a back 3/5 to now a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1, depending on what kind of system he's playing, out of possession, in possession. And I think what I said before and mentioned before about, I think he's just given them the freedom to play football, be on the front foot, carry the ball out from the back. If you make a mistake, then he's told the players that it's on him. It's not on the players. He's telling them to play a certain way. It's on the manager. So I think when your manager comes in and he's getting players to play to their strengths and getting them to enjoy their football, and I think everybody who plays football or watches football wants to watch football the way Man City play it. Liverpool have played it in previous seasons. Spurs are starting to play that way. So, I think especially players like Maddison, Son, Udogie, Porro, we're playing to the strengths. These players, and Bissouma is just like a player reborn. I think. I think it'd be hard to argue to say that he's, for me, he's been one of the top 3 midfielders in the Premier League or across European football over the first 4 or 5 games. So it makes a big difference when your defender can pass it into a midfielder in tight spaces. He can put a body swerve in, he can put a pass in, he can take 2 players out of the game. We're moving forward, and then you're relying on your creative players in midfield and the front 3 to make things happen. So, like you said, we've lost Kane. Richarlison's in there. He's not really cutting it, but I have faith with him. He's Brazil's number 9. I think there's a player in there, but when you're in and you're replacing somebody of Harry Kane's stature, there's big pressure to do them kind of numbers, and I know he's not going to do them numbers. It's going to be pretty hard, pretty difficult for Richarlison to reach them kind of numbers. And when he signed Johnson, I mentioned it to Badge in the office that I said, I've got a funny feeling that he will push Son through the middle and he will play with Johnson out wide along with either Kulusevski or Solomon, and then Richarlison will have to come in and out like that. So I just think it's as you do when a new manager comes in, you look him up, you look at previous interviews, previous quotes, and everything that he said and everything about him has always been about entertaining, being on the front foot, playing positive, attacking football, and that's all he knows. So he's brought that into Spurs, and like I said, in such a short space of time, he's completely changed the atmosphere. I think at Burnley in the game before, the Spurs fans were thinking we've got our Tottenham back. So there's you've got Robbie Williams singing about Ange, but that's a song that Spurs fans have obviously made up through the Robbie Williams song, and he's done a rendition himself as well. So the vibes are good. It's looking good, but it's a long season. I've been a Spurs fan long enough to know that I'm not going to get carried away.
I thought you were going to give us a rendition of Angels next.
Listen, if Spurs finish in the top 4 or even win the league, I'll come back on the pod and I will sing the Angels, Robbie Williams.
We'll insist you come back.
Yeah, he'll be the Ange Postecoglou version. So you can hold me to that.
Yeah, I think with the just very quickly, I think with Spurs, Moggy's hit the nail on the head in terms of what that manager has done in a short space of time. And that's not to say, listen, that they're gonna continue on this kind of upward or this kind of high performance, 3 wins and a draw, second to Manchester City only in the league table, and they've had their obviously a big home result against Manchester United as well. I think they've got the North London derby in a couple of games time, so that'll be a big test. I think it's at the Emirates, so it'll be very interesting to see. But Ayub, I've commented many times about this manager and what I like about him, so I won't go down that road. I think Spurs have finally found a coach that they can resonate with. The challenge they had with the other 2 coaches, and one of the things that you did miss out, Moggy, in your opening speech, was how Ayub was waxing lyrical about Mourinho's appointment. But anyway, we'll discuss that on another day. But in the end,
I'll comment afterwards on that.
I'm sure you will. I think you said something along the lines of, "I guarantee he'll win this and he'll win that and what have you." But anyway, we digress. The challenge with managers like Mourinho and Conte, elite as they are, they know more about football than I ever will. But the challenge they have is that they put their imprint on the team and create systems that will ultimately create results that will create kind of titles. And they've been successful at the highest level. So that's not me knocking them. But when you maybe come into a team and you try and put that across when perhaps the team, the culture, the club needs something a little different, needs a little bit more freedom, needs a little bit more flexibility. All that Ange's doing, apart from, yes, a few tactical and technical issues and what have you, is he's saying to the players, "I believe in you, so let's go out and play." None more kind of symptomatic when you watch the Bournemouth game and you get that challenge from Romero, I think, on Solanke, and kind of 6-7 Spurs players are flooding forward when Maddison slips in Richarlison and should definitely score when he goes around the keeper. But it's all of a sudden Spurs flying forward, making runs into the box, taking risks. Football is about taking risks. You can't win games of football without having some semblance of risk. And I think Ange is willing, as Moggy said, to take some risks, maybe lose a few games in order to try and win the majority. They're second in shots behind Brighton in the league, second in shots on target as well. However, 13th in missed chances, so they're relatively efficient as well in terms of their conversion rate, and 5th in blocks. So Moggy mentioned defensively as well, they're doing well. And Romero I'm not necessarily his biggest fan. I think he's at times a selfish centre-back, but this season come up with a couple of big goals, obviously at Brentford and the finish at Burnley, which was incredible finish, to be fair, from just outside the box. But they're functioning really well. Our Spurs, some bigger tests lie ahead. But look, Arsenal showed last year as well. They started really well. People expected them to fall off, and yes, they came up short of their expectations at the end or their target at the end. But they went on quite the run, to be fair, for the first 30-odd games. So let's see a fantastic start by them. Again, interested to see how they continue because they are playing some lovely football.
Well, firstly, I'm going to take umbrage with your Mourinho comment. If he hadn't have been sacked, I think he would have won a trophy.
It was against Manchester City.
It doesn't matter who it was against.
Spurs record against Manchester City, we all know what that is like. So.
I was still maintain that he probably would have won a trophy. But I think you guys have absolutely summed it up. Obviously, Moggy, you've gone through what you think of Spurs. Uwais. My take is, I mean, I must confess that I think that the selling of Kane, and I've already alluded to it in previous shows, that in a perverse way has been the best thing that's happened to Spurs. It seems impossible to make a comment like that, but I just think that the players seem to be playing with a lot more freedom. They've embraced the responsibilities. I think the key, you always have to have some sprinkling of magic dust, and that is James Maddison. I've been a huge fan of this player, and he just oozes class. I think he is world class, and I think as long as he stays fit, and he's got a decent record, he tends to stay fit for large portions of the season. I would actually go as far as sort of saying that I still sort of say that Liverpool will win the league. Man City obviously will always be there or thereabouts, but I think that Tottenham are absolutely in the mix.
And don't forget Chelsea, Ayub. Just
Forget Chelsea. Don't even
Oh,
talk
okay.
about Chelsea. No. These are the three clubs I think for this year.
Really? You're
It's
putting
Liverpool.
Spurs. You're putting
Yeah,
Spurs up there, are
absolutely.
you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that the
I'm
kiss? I hope that's not a kiss of death there, are you?
Oh,
I
yeah.
hope that's not.
Oh, yeah.
Because George has been on this podcast and his team's not won a game since
Exactly.
he's been. So, I hope this ain't a kiss of death, and I hope you say that isn't a kiss of death. But I think on that point of Kane, I think if we didn't have the start that we had, Ayub, then the conversations could be a lot different. That we've sold Kane, where the goal's going to come from. So it could very easily, and we know football is, it can be very fickle at times. So as soon as things start going a little bit, downwards, then them conversations could potentially rear its head. But we are lucky that we've had the start that we've had. So Kane hasn't really been mentioned as much. Look, for me, one of the best players I've seen pull on a Spurs shirt, hands down, in my time.
After myself, but go on, carry on.
Well, after I've seen Bale put on the shirt, I've seen Modric put on the shirt, players like Van der Vaart, Ledley King. I'm talking in recent times, I'm not talking about the Hoddle days and stuff. I'm talking about players that I've seen. I do tend to get out and get to away games, especially, and Kane was a very, very special player for Tottenham Hotspur, and I think he got a lot of unfair stick from opposition fans. On the whole, he's not won anything. We get it. He could easily have been in the shoes that Haaland is in right now, because if Levy did let him go 2 seasons ago, he would have won absolutely everything with Man City. So, we know there's only one or two clubs across Europe that are going to win pretty much everything. And in our league, it seems to be Man City, and Harry Kane going there. He would have had 3-4 trophies guaranteed already by now, and potentially higher up in the mix for the Ballon d'Or as well. Because I think the fact that he's English, the fact that he's not won anything, the fact that he played for Spurs, a lot of opposition fans and a lot of neutrals just didn't tend to give him his dues. He's England's all-time record goal scorer as well. Fantastic footballer, honestly, for me. And in this team, I think he's scoring 2 or 3 goals a game in this Ange team. In my opinion.
Yeah, I'm just thinking. Ayub was around for Jimmy Greaves, so I think he'll disagree.
Yeah,
to be fair.
How does he compare to Jimmy Greaves?
Yeah, you tell us.
He's not fit to tie his laces. Also, I've been told. On what I've watched on YouTube.
I'm sure.
But just on the point of that, on Harry Kane going to Germany, what's your thoughts on that as a Spurs fan? Obviously, you never, I suppose, pleased to lose your top player. So, what were your thoughts on that?
I wasn't. I was on holiday when the news broke, and I was heartbroken. My missus will tell you that as well. She was like, my mood kind of went down that day. I ended up nearly collapsing because of the heat, and I think it was the news of Harry Kane. I was outside my hotel room, collapsed, and the hotel staff had to let me in. But I'm gonna put that down to sunstroke. But it was on the day. It was on the day that the news broke about Harry Kane leaving. Now, look, for me, it's bittersweet that he's not in the Premier League, and I don't have to see him in, week in, week out in an opposition's kit, and potentially playing against us twice in the season. We're not in the Champions League, so we're not going to be facing him this season anyway. But look, he deserves everything he gets. Hopefully at Bayern, he's pretty much 99.9% guaranteed to win the league there, and potentially one of the domestic cups. And let's see how far he takes Bayern in the Champions League as well. So it is bittersweet. I didn't want to see him go, regardless of the price, but it's happened. He's gone to a different country. So as they say, is it out of sight, out of mind? That's kind of how it is at the minute. I've unfollowed Bayern Munich and the German football kind of things at the minute. It's like breaking up with an ex. But
I was gonna say,
I'm sure I'll refollow, and I will be following his the next part of his career. And like I wish him all the best, because I want him to have them trophies that everybody says that he needs to be classed as the player that people don't think that he is. But on that note as well, I will say that Spurs have given him the opportunities to be successful and win things at Tottenham, which some people, might not believe, but we've been in a Champions League final, right? He was part of that. Maybe half injured, half not, but he was part of that run. He was there. He played in the final. We've been in numerous cup finals, FA Cup semi-finals. We've been in a couple of title races, if you'd like want to call them, when Leicester won it and then Chelsea won it the season after. We were seen as their closest challengers at that point. So Kane has been part of a Tottenham squad under Pochettino that has given him and the opportunity to potentially win trophies. So it's not as if he's been in a squad, in a team that's not been challenging or not had the opportunity. So did he? Some Spurs fans might say that he didn't step up when it mattered and get us across the line, but it's a team game. I know your big players have got to step up in them games, and we've seen over the years that Ronaldo and Messi have done that. But they've been in teams that are full of other great players as well. So just playing devil's advocate a little bit. When people say, "Oh, he's not won anything," he's had the opportunity at Spurs. He's been in finals, semi-finals, title challenges, the biggest game on the planet in the after the World Cup final. Obviously, that he's been in the Champions League final. So, it's going to be a lot easier doing it at Bayern because they do it there every year, and it would have been the same at Man City. So, players of that caliber, that level, I think they deserve to be playing at clubs that are seen to be like your elite clubs, like your Bayerns, your Reals, your Barcelonas, your Man Cities. So all the best to him. All the best to him.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would say is, in the end, is I don't think it's a case of pointing fingers. I've heard some nonsense about was Harry Kane holding Spurs back, or look at how Spurs. It's not a case of that. It's just you get to a point where maybe it's best for him and it's best for Spurs, and now Spurs are looking. It's a 4-game sample size. We've got to calm down a little bit, but it's clear that they're playing a slightly different brand of football. There are footballers within that squad who are now able to spread their wings a little bit and play properly. The only bit perhaps that I would disagree with you on your first point was that, if anything, and this goes to the manager's credit, I think, is that there has been quite a shift in that first 11. If you think about it, especially along the spine, you've got Maddison playing just behind, obviously a new player coming in. You got Sarr Bissouma playing in the midfield, and that wasn't the case, obviously, last season, the year before. And you got Van de Ven at the back, Udogie, the goalkeeper replacing another a revered goalkeeper in Lloris. Yes, he started to make quite a number of mistakes, and maybe it was his time to move on. So the fact is, they've had actually a lot of personnel shift, yet the manager seems to have got them playing in a certain way and a certain style. They don't look like they're kind of just strangers who've just never met before. So look, I think that's to the manager's credit, and maybe that's what Spurs needed, a bit of a clean cut from maybe previous regimes and what have you. But again, I give all the credit to the manager, but Harry Kane, again, incredible player, but I think the right time for both player and club, I think.
All right, so enough about Spurs. There are 19 other teams in the Premier League. So,
are there?
I've wanted to cover Luton for quite some time. So come on, let's go.
So it would be rude not to talk about, I suppose, the other teams. So it really interesting, as I said. I mean, it's been albeit it's been 4 games, but I think it's been a really interesting start to the season. And I think what Spurs are doing is something which is exciting, not just Spurs fan, but it excites me as well, because now that I'm in the Championship, I think it's Liverpool is my side, but my next side is Spurs. So I'm going to be back in Spurs. And I'm hoping that they do win something, because it will be the ultimate irony that Harold Kane sort of moves to Germany and Spurs win things in the UK. So
it won't be the League Cup anyway. So that's out the window.
So let me just get this right, Ayub. So Leeds is the club nearest and dearest to your heart. Liverpool is your pick for the title, so obviously you'll be hoping for them to win the Premier League. You're suggesting that Spurs are your second team because of your affection for the club and Moggy himself. I'm just wondering where where Chelsea come in, given that your son supports them as well. Where do they rank in your affection?
I mean, Chelsea. I'm not too fussed. Obviously, for my son's sake, it's important that they do okay. But ultimately, it's football means more than family. You can edit this little bit. No,
Chelsea,
Chelsea is more to do with the fact that I've never quite liked the way that Chelsea operate a football club. So it's more to do with that. I mean, I loved Chelsea. I think in Frank Lampard, John Terry, in a sense there was a certain stability, but even then, it was Abramovich, and maybe perhaps there wasn't everything that I liked about him, but there was a certain stability. But thereafter, I mean, especially now with this new ownership, there's a sour taste that's left in one's mouth. So I'm not too keen, and really that overrides the fact that my son supports Chelsea. So
I hope they get relegated. Sorry,
no,
Momo.
no, that would
Sorry,
be too
Momo.
much. No, that would be too much. That's as a father, I can't have that. But talking about other teams in the Premier League, it leads us nicely on to, I suppose, stories that have developed over the course of the last few weeks. So, Uwais, I want to sort of give you the floor. What sort of caught your eye over the last few weeks in terms of developments in the Premier League, or
Well,
maybe outside the Premier League?
Yeah, I'm gonna stick to the Premier League for the time being. 4 weeks in, all the teams bar Luton and Burnley have played 4 times. We've now got the international break over the weekend, and I imagine in midweek as well. I think there's 2 main things that have caught the eye. One is the situation with the decisions with referees. They've been obviously in the news recently, not just with decisions that are kind of scrutinize VAR and all the rest of it, but also some of the audio clips and video clips released recently covering communication between the VAR official and the referees. And I think that's something I would like to get into perhaps on the next episode in detail, because I thought that was fascinating in terms of what was released. The big storyline for me, I think so far, it was a bit of a coin toss for me, but I think if you've been following the news recently, I still believe, because they are the biggest club in the country and arguably the world, is still Manchester United in terms of their start to the season for me. Just because there's just a lot of noise around that club right now, and not all welcome noise as well. You think about the ongoing takeover saga with the Glazer family, with the 2 prospective buyers. I mean, that's been going on for 9 months, 12 months, who knows? Nobody cares anymore, but it's getting incredibly boring. You've got that hanging over the club. You then had the Mason Greenwood saga. Obviously, he's playing for Getafe, I believe, right now. So they had to deal with all of that in terms of the fallout around that. They've currently got 2 other situations going on with their footballers, Jadon Sancho and Anthony, for 2 very different reasons. But again, there's a lot of noise around the club. They were trying to get rid of Scott McTominay during the transfer window. Harry Maguire, they ended the game against Arsenal with Johnny Evans and Harry Maguire as their 2 centre-backs, which also created a bit of a Twitter went into meltdown about that. I think that was used as a stick to beat them with. But yeah, just a lot of noise. The way David De Gea left the club in terms of no real fanfare. They let his contract expire. It was only 7-8 days afterwards that he got a little bit of a send-off after more than a decade at the club. And they've also had injuries with Shaw, Varane, and a few others as well. Højlund obviously started the season with an injury as well. So there's a lot of noise, and obviously the big tough defeat last weekend. They've lost 2. 1 to both the North London team, Spurs game week 2, Arsenal game week 4 in heartbreaking fashion. They've got Brighton home next, game week 5, a game they lost last week. And if you look at the storyline again that's developing, just this whole noise around Sancho, the noise around Anthony after what happened with Mason Greenwood, it's just when you want your club to start kind of focusing on the pitch, trying to put a run together, all hands on deck type mentality, just seems there's a little bit of it could go bad, and it could go bad very quickly. So it'll be interesting to see how Manchester United deal with all of that. The only thing I would say about that, one final point, is there's a lot of misconceptions, I think, about Glazers and what they mean for the club. And yes, they've not necessarily put their own money into the club, but if you look at the Liverpool ownership, it's a very similar model, and they've been, 10 times more successful in recent times, or at least I would argue. So they've been competing for titles, Champions League, winning Champions League in other finals against Champions League, against losing twice to Real Madrid. So they've been there knocking on the door of the big trophies, and they have a very similar model, also taking money out of the club. So it's a bit of a misconception when you look at the kind of transfer spends over the last 5-10 years. So let's see how it all works out for Man United. But again, I do think they've probably been the big storyline, I think, from a club perspective in the early part of this season.
I agree. I think for a club that finished quite strongly last season, there's a considerable amount of disharmony. You've absolutely hit the nail on the head. There's so many issues, and I just don't think there's a solution right at this moment in time. And it has to have an impact when you've got players with issues. It has to be something that's obviously discussed, talked about on the training field, and maybe it's transmitted onto the park at this moment in time. So I agree. I think it is a massive story, and you are absolutely right. I still maintain they are probably the biggest club in the world. Moggy, apart from Spurs, any other stories that have caught your eye?
As Uwais has said, I think that he's hit the nail on the head with the cracks appearing at Manchester United at the minute. But I think it was a similar start for them last season in terms of results as well, and they did end up finishing the season strongly. They have got some very good footballers in that squad. They were all waxing lyrical about Ten Hag and how he's come in and changed the environment, just like we've talked about Big Ange. But it seems like there's cracks appearing there that you don't want appearing for the so-called biggest club in the world. So let's see how that unfolds for them in the next few weeks. They need to start picking up results quickly, or the pressure will mount on Ten Hag himself. So other than that, I think interesting that Luton, being in the Premier League, I've watched a couple of their games, and I've been thinking, I think they'll be lucky to get 10 points and potentially even 10 goals, to be honest with
you. Don't you tee up Ayub.
No, I'm honestly, the way I'm just thinking, because they've not spent much. Obviously they might have their reasons for doing what they're doing. Forest went down the completely opposite route of what Luton are going down. I know they had to spend like 10 million or so on their stadium to get it Premier League ready. Not spent much on player recruitment. Are they happy with just being in the Premier League for this season, getting the money, going down, parachute payment, redoing their stadium, and then seeing if they can come back up again or not? But
he's just nicking my argument.
I'm just saying, from the two games that I've seen them play, it's gonna be very difficult away. Maybe at their home, they could potentially give teams a good game with it being a tie atmosphere, with the way they play. But I just don't see that they've got the quality to be able to maybe even muster up 10 points. And if they do, then fair play to them, but they're going straight back down. Burnley, Ayub was telling me they were going to do really well this season.
I never said that.
Yeah, you and George were speaking, and I said I think they're going to struggle as well. Granted, they've played, they've had a difficult start to the season, as Burnley fans at work keep telling me that they've had a tough run of fixtures to open up with, but it's going to be difficult. It's going to be very difficult for these teams to compete and stay in the Premier League. Forest did it in, a way that not many other teams have done it previously, by signing, 30 or 40 players. And they still went and signed another 4 or 5 players, this season as well. So, it's the promised land, the Premier League. That's where everybody wants to be. Everybody's competing to be in there. I think Burnley will, be a lot better than Luton. But other than that, Brighton started well again. Will they struggle come European Thursday nights? And touching on that, Newcastle not had the start that they would have liked as well. And, I've heard a lot of chat about Eddie Howe potentially being one of the first casualties, coming up to Christmas if this continues, because the added pressure of playing in the Champions League, and then off the back of the season they've just had, with the new owners, granted they can't spend the money that they would everybody thinks they're going to spend because of financial fair play and commercial revenue. And I watched their documentary on Amazon, which was quite, it was quite interesting. Amanda Staveley came across quite well on there. She's got a 10% stake in the club, which I didn't really, kind of grasp and know about until I watched that documentary. But I think it's going to be difficult for Newcastle as well to keep and carry on, with that momentum they had at the back end of last season. So yeah, Newcastle's, indifferent start to the season. The cracks appearing at United, and Spurs doing really well. I think they're quite the main points from the first 4 game weeks. Man City, they do what they do, you see. So not really going to talk about that, but. Yeah.
I want to ask you. You've famously said that Luton will not win a game this season. So
is that all right? Yeah, I've heard.
So how many points are they going to get? Are you
more than 10 or less than 10? Ayub, I'm saying lucky to get 10.
I'll less than 10.
Less than 10.
Less than 10. They will not win a game of football. But and I've given you my theory as to what I think they're doing. I mean, I think some of the things that Moggy talks about is exactly true. I think the intention isn't in any way. I mean, I think if they stay up, fantastic, it's a miracle. But the intention is to spend a minimal amount. You're absolutely right. Forest went down the route of, right, we're going to buy as many players as we can, invest, in a sense, almost trying to guarantee to stay in the Premier League. I think Luton are saying, well, look, other clubs have done that where they spend, but they end up going down. So what we'll do, we'll not spend. we'll invest in a stadium, which they have to, but that's a minimal spend considering how much revenue they get. Next season, when they do get relegated, they'll still have lots of money from this season. They'll have a parachute payment as well. They'll have a squad which has obviously got promoted. They'll strengthen slightly. They'll get promoted again. If they add the money they've already got from the season that they got promoted the first time, with the second payment that they get, I think that will be the time when Luton will decide, right, now we need to establish ourselves in the Premier League. I think it's a wonderful strategy if that is the case. But I just feel the fact he's not invested, it almost seems quite obvious that that's the case. But I think it's a really, really smart strategy, because too many clubs come up, spend 150 million, go down straight away, because this is a league without mercy. This is a high quality league, and it's a league where even if you spend, it's no guarantee that you're going to go up. So I think that's what the chairman is doing, and he seems quite a shrewd bloke, the Luton chairman. So that's my thinking. And just in terms of the story so far that I'm really liking, Liverpool, the way that they've started, I'm really, really pleased. I have quite a strong feeling that this will be Klopp's last season. And I have a feeling that he wants to finish on a high, win the league. Then maybe he'll walk off into the sunset, maybe give himself a year or two, and then manage Germany. That's what I see Klopp doing. And I just got a feeling that I think the middle of the park, they've improved fantastically well. I think the players that they've bought are really, really good. In terms of the attacking 5 players that they have at their disposal, I think they're as good as any in world football. Maybe defense is still a question, but really, if you've got that in terms of midfield and attacking, you're probably going to win more games than not. So I see Liverpool as serious title contenders. I want them to win the league purely just for Klopp, if nothing else.
Yeah, I think they've had a great start. They've had the result of the season, haven't they? At Newcastle, I would argue.
Yeah.
Moggy might argue away to Burnley 5-2, but I still think just because Super Sunday, big game between 2 top teams, to go there and win with 10 men, incredible result. You saw the reaction. I know you spoke about it on the podcast with Trent Alexander-Arnold screaming in the 95th minute to the Liverpool fans, and I agree with you. I think that there is an interesting storyline to watch out for. They've held on to Salah for the next number of months at least. Will they come calling the Saudi Pro League in January or in the summer? Time will tell you. I think they would at least come back next summer, so we shall see. Just one more club, I just want to get your thoughts on Everton. I don't know if you saw the story with Demarai Gray leaving for the Saudi Pro League.
Yeah.
Made some comments referencing perhaps that there was a disconnect between him and Sean Dyche. They've not obviously had the best start this season. A lot of turmoil off the pitch as well. I think they've got Arsenal at home game week 5 straight after the international break. Do you see Everton again having one of those seasons? If you remember, a lot of the reaction after they survived on the last game of the season with that goal from Decore was that we don't want to be in this position again, but it looks like they may, and I say may, be destined for another challenging season. How do you see it panning out for Everton?
They'll stay up purely because there's 3 sides worse than them. I think Sheffield United and Luton, that's a given. Those 2 teams will go down. I think Sheffield United will probably have a little bit more fight, but those 2 teams will go down. There is that danger of that 3rd spot, but I just think there's enough quality. Dyche, I think, is a dead man walking. I don't think he's going to last too many games. The players, if you look at the players, they're not a great side. They're not a very, very good side, but they've got enough decent players, Everton, that a good manager should have them maybe sort of 13th, 14th, 15th. And I think that's really the expectation at the moment for Everton with the side that they have. But there is something not quite right. I mean, Dyche last season, by the skin of his teeth, to a certain extent, kept them up. But this season, I just don't think so. I mean, I think there's a lot of troubles at the moment at Everton. I mean, what did Gray say? I'm not sure what he said. What was his comments?
No, I think he just alluded to the fact that there were some, stories speculating about, how he was kind of performing and training and getting an opportunity and what have you. I think I looked at the lineup. I think he's put out over the last couple of games. I know he's been playing like a right back at right midfield and on a few occasions, especially in one of the home games as well. But a player you would think Demarai Gray, I'm not saying he's a world beater by any stretch, but the boy's got a little bit of talent, bit of flair.
He certainly has. He certainly has.
It will be left Goodison Park as well. Is Dyche turning Everton into a little bit of a Burnley again, in terms of that kind of pragmatic football, and maybe that's what they need. I don't want to kind of turn my nose on it, but it's just, is it what Everton fans want? It's not something that's going to get you off your seats and get you all excited. So.
I mean, there is something quite rotten at Everton at this moment in terms of ownership, in terms of everything that's happening, which is at the moment they're a club that I think are in the process of moving stadiums. So really,
I was just going to say, I think it's imperative they stay up because of that stadium building.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but there is something. I mean, with obviously Frank Lampard previously, it was a club that was going nowhere. Dyche kept them up, which obviously I presume was the remit, but they've not kicked on, and they seem to be in another dogfight. So I just can't see Dyche lasting till Christmas because he's getting nothing out of these players. Everton will continue to be this sort of side that sort of flirts with relegation, and maybe it may just be that this season could be the time, or could be the year that perhaps their luck runs out. I've just got a feeling that it's a good time to be in the Premier League if you're one of the poor teams because of the rubbish that's down there. I'm still gutted. If Leeds were in the Premier League this year, we'd stay up with ease. So I'm gutted we were there last year.
I keep telling you that other teams would have thought that about Leeds if they'd stayed up. That's one of the spots sewn up.
Ayub, if you don't get promoted, we're coming for Archie Gray, mate.
Oh, he's sensational. I mean, I did get a little bit carried away saying Archie Gray is better than Declan Rice. He may not be now, but he will be in the not too distant future. So
when just to kind of tie you down.
1 year, give him 1 year. That's how good. Yeah. That is how good. I mean, last time we did offload a player called Jack Clark, which we were delighted to get 10 million from Spurs because he was never going to be a star.
He's ripping it up in the Championship for Sunderland.
He's doing all right. But I think
he was never going to get a fair crack at the whip at Spurs as a young lad. Was Clark, so I think that's a bit unfair on him.
I keep telling the Championship. I keep telling you that I can actually delve into the analytics to see when viewers turn the podcast episode off, and it's normally going to be around this time. Any reference to Leeds, any reference to Leeds and former players.
He's got to talk about Leeds. It's his team, so
yeah, you can do so on another podcast if you want. But, not an hour's.
Right, no. My intention always is to every single podcast to at least make one comment about Leeds, but it's a Premier League show. So Uwais is absolutely right. We talk about virtually all things Premier League. And on that note, I think it's time we called it a day. We've been on for about an hour or so. It's a gorgeous Friday evening. We've all worked hard, or at least that's what I've been told to say this week. So I think we deserve a little bit of sun. But before we go, first let me do the usual thing. So
Well, can
please...
I just ask you, just one last thing, because we've got Moggy on. It would be rude not to. I just want to kind of time down. Where do you think Spurs will actually finish this season? Go on, just a prediction, not what you hope, what you genuinely believe. And top 4, by the way, isn't a league position, so you'll have to give me.
Okay, correct me if I'm wrong, but does top 5 this season get you into the Champions League with the new format of the Champions League next season?
I'm not so sure. There was some noise about the Premier League.
Well, the question was, where are Spurs?
I will say Spurs will finish 4th. I think Man City are going to be too strong. Ayub, you've said Liverpool. Liverpool, they're looking good. They've got fantastic attacking and midfield options, and with Van Dijk and Alisson at the back, they're always going to be there or thereabouts. Spurs 3rd or 4th. I think. Let's see. Let me. I'm going to say 4th.
Oh, well, they jumped up a place, I think.
Hopefully 3rd, but 4th.
All right, okay. I've got a feeling. I mean,
what do you think?
I think it'll be 3rd. I think they'll
be
3rd.
I'll take 3rd. Yeah,
Liverpool,
take 3rd.
City, and Spurs, but it'll be close. I've really got a feeling that I think anybody who gets a result against Spurs, you'll have to really be on top of your game, because that is a team where there's enough depth as well. There's quality, defensively they're decent as well. But in terms of midfield, in terms of attacking options, I think Spurs are fantastic. I think the key is Maddison. Maddison is the key.
I think our first real test will come in a couple of weeks against Arsenal. United wasn't the test that I thought it was going to be. It ended up being it ended up being a lot easier in that second half.
Shots fired.
Well, it did. It ended up being a lot easier than it has been in previous season. They think it's the easiest 6 points or 3 points United always get against Spurs, but the way we played and got that result against them, I think the real test is going to come up against Arsenal, and let's see how we fare against them. But you said top 4 is not a position, but comfortably in the top 4, I will say.
I'll go with 6th.
6th, fair enough.
And that's not an indictment to suggest they're just going to fall off. If you'll back me up, but I did suggest that the league table will be fairly bunched this season, I think.
Yeah. I'll stick with my 3rd. So it's been an absolute pleasure, Moggy, to have you on the show.
The pleasure has been all mine, gentlemen. The pleasure has been all mine.
And I'm sure we'll have you on again, either when Spurs are collapsing or maybe doing really, really well.
Can't find him. I
hope it's the latter.
Right. So let me, I was talking about sort of subscribing. So if you haven't subscribed, please do so. Smash a like. And also, if you could share with your friends. I mean, I keep on sort of saying that. So if you do have lots of friends, I mean, this is another great opportunity that we have with Moggy. Apparently, Moggy has hundreds and hundreds of friends. So I'm expecting this to have a tremendous amount of...
Ayub thinks this is going to reach my family in Africa. Let's see.
So it will be absolutely tremendous if obviously you can support this channel. For those who already support the channel, thank you so much. We really do appreciate it. It means a tremendous amount to us. And on that fond note, I'm going to wish you a lovely weekend. So until the next time, don't stray off.